Fort McHenry preserves in its museum collection some remarkable and very rare objects related to the War of 1812 and specifically to the Battle of Baltimore and the bombardment of the fort in September of 1814. What we have here are a group of objects that were owned by one young man, a Baltimore County resident by the name of Darius Stansbury, who actually fought in the Battle of North Point in, just outside of Baltimore in September 1814. It is remarkable that these objects survived together and were donated to the fort in 2011. The musket that Private Stansbury owned was made in Massachusetts by a man named Asa Sutton, and it bears the date of 1812 right here. And Sutton's name is right here on the lock plate. It was converted, it was originally a flintlock, and it was converted to a percussion, probably around the middle of the 19th century. Private Stansbury was a member of a particular militia unit that is very historically important to the city of Baltimore. He was a member of the company organized by a group, an organization called the Ancient and Honorable Mechanical Company of Baltimore. This group had been founded in 1763 here in Baltimore. It was composed principally of craftsmen and shop owners and small manufacturers, and they organized to both provide fire protection services, firefighting for what was then Baltimore town, but also, in the case of need, to raise a militia. Well, obviously, the attack by the British in 1814 was a very important need for the militia unit, and they formed. In addition to having his weapon, they would of course had their own uniform. And what's even more rare than the survival of this musket is the survival of the military hat or cap, which is called a shako, that Private Stansbury owned. Now, as you can see, the shako is not in very good condition. In fact, it's missing some of its original top. And the original hand-painted decoration of a red chain links has become very worn. But the fact that it survives at all is really remarkable. These two items descended together throughout the 19th and 20th century, and items like this, it's just remarkable that it wasn't simply thrown out in the trash at some point. Also very unusual that it survives at all is the neck guard here, the leather neck guard. When the fort was first given these objects in 2011, they were in considerably worse condition than you see them now. We were able to have them professionally conserved by art conservators at Harper's Ferry Conservation Center, which is the National Park Service's National Conservation Laboratory in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. There was no way to preserve the original lining of the shako, of the leather shako, within the hat itself. So the conservators worked out this great solution, which was to preserve the very fine linen lining separately on its own stand, because it's important to preserve this because it has, on this linen lining, it bears a label from the 1840s giving the full history of who owned this item. And it says, "This hat was worn by Darius Stansbury at the Battle of North Point, September 12, 1814. Private Mechanical Volunteers, Captain Howard. Presented by his daughter, Mrs. Olivia Kimberly." So there's the original history on the lining. Even better, the original label of the maker of this shako is on the top. And that was a firm in Baltimore town by the name, run by William and Richard Hart. Their shop was on Baltimore Street, what is now called Baltimore Street, then called Market Street, and they say they are saddlers, cap, and harness makers. Well, here's a cap, and they have on their label a running horse, which alludes to their being harness and saddle makers as well. So taken as a group, these objects are extraordinarily important to have survived, and that we have the full history of them, having been worn and used in that very crucial battle of North Point here in Baltimore in September of 1814.
Here we have a light dragoon's helmet that was retailed by Canfield and Brother here in Baltimore during the War of 1812. You can see here that it has a plate with the dragoon on horseback below the eagle with his sword held above his head. And on the edge here, there's a button with the head of Medusa. So it's a leather helmet with silver-plated scale straps and silver-plated buttons and plates with a comb of a horsehair plume on the top. So you can imagine a dragoon on horseback riding into battle with this atop his head was quite intimidating as he was rushing at his opponent. This style of helmet was definitely worn by the Independent Light Dragoons of the 5th Cavalry of Baltimore City. We have no proof that this particular helmet was worn by a dragoon in that unit, but they definitely wore this style. Here we have a telescope that may have been used by George Brooks, and he was commander of the U.S. naval cutter James Madison, which was built in Baltimore. George Brooks was the commander during the War of 1812. It sailed the oceans attacking enemy merchant vessels and was fairly successful until August, when he must not have been using his telescope, possibly, and mistook a 32-gun frigate, the HMS Barbados, as a merchant vessel and attacked, and he was captured as a prisoner of war along with his unit. It's made of brass and likely had a leather covering along this section. You can see here it's engraved G. Brooks.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. Get inspired at battlefields.org.